Let me start by saying, as an Italian, the aesthetic of this building is so lovely, isn't it? And thank you all for whatever hand you had in the revitalization of this room. It's great to be back. So with that, it's these are the right glasses, 9:27 a.m. and I would like to call to order the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee of Thursday, October 26, 2023. Before we begin, please take note of the fact that the meeting is being recorded. Welcome again to my colleagues and everyone joining us here in person, as well as those listening in on the phone. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting, you are welcome to do so. And if you've not already done so, please let Thomas in the back of the room or Justine on the call-in line know what items you would like to speak on today. Madam Secretary, please begin by calling the roll.
Thank you. We'll start with Director Cochran this time. Conroy is absent. Parr is absent. Rabbit. Thier. Vice Chair Maston. Chair Garbarina.
Here.
And President Terrio. Thank you. You have a quorum and you are a committee of the whole. Also in the room, you have Director Judith Che, Grosball, Hernandez, Hill, and Rodoni.
Great. Thank you, Amaret. After our discussion, we will ask for any public comment before moving on. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. We will begin with agenda item number 3, which is to approve actions relative to professional services agreement number 2011 B2, design services for the Golden Gate Bridge physical suicide deterrent system with HNTB Corporation. The staff report begins on page 3, and John Eberly is here to present the report. And John, please go ahead and begin. But before you do that, Holly is recusing herself from this item. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I am going to recuse myself from items 3 and 4. And I'm going to exit the room and ask Amaret or someone to come get me.
Great, thank you. John, go right ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The item before you this morning, request your recommendation to authorize execution of the second addendum, 12th Amendment, PSA number 2011 B2 with HNTB Corporation in an amount not to exceed $1,400,000, continuation of construction engineering design support services during construction of a bridge physical suicide deterrent system construction project number 1526. As stated in the report, project 1526 is mostly funded with monies from the Federal Highway Administration, and according to the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District rules and procedures set forth by Caltrans Local Assistance Manual for federally assisted projects. In conformance with the LAPM, the district developed a construction contract administration plan for the construction project. HNTB is the design consultant for the suicide deterrent system and also the new maintenance traveler. So consistent with established engineering practice and as referenced in PSA with HNTB, the administration and management of the physical suicide deterrent project construction requires that the design consultant provide engineering support services during the construction of the project. As previously reported to the committee, the contractor did not progress the work as anticipated and required by the contract. Has informed the district that the suicide deterrent system itself, the majority of it will not be completed until the end of calendar year 2023, and the remainder of the project will not be completed until mid-2026. So as a result of the delay of the construction completion and increase in the project 1526 budget is necessary to finance the extension of the construction management and engineering efforts by engineering staff and consultants. So immediate concern is the contract with HNTB. December 2016, the board authorized the 12th Amendment to their PSA. That was for providing engineering support project. The board also authorized a contingency of $600,000. The scope of services at that time included reviewing and recommending for approval contractors' technical submittals, working drawings, and requests for substitutions, preparing written responses to the contractor's requests for information regarding the design, providing recommendations for resolution of differing site conditions found during construction, attending mock-up installation of suicide deterrent net, attending field meetings, preparing plans and specifications for construction contract change orders if necessary. So the 12th Amendment was established based on the original construction duration and the completion date of January 2021. It was also based on the estimated number of technical submittals, working drawings, and work plans that were required for construction. Since that time, the contractor has significantly increased the number of technical submittals, working drawings, and work plans for the work. And in addition, a much higher number of resubmittals have been required to achieve correct submittal content. So consequently, the review effort by HNTB has increased. In January 2023, the first addendum to the 12th Amendment utilizing the authorized contingency was executed. Table 2 included in the staff report shows a history of the PSA. A substantial number of the technical and working drawings required to be reviewed by HNTB are still outstanding, including for the installation of a portion of the net in span 4 of the suspension bridge, removal of the remaining original interior maintenance travelers from the suspension bridge, the fabrication and installation of the new maintenance travelers, and removal of the contractor's access system at the completion of the project. In addition, there will be shop and field testing required of those maintenance travelers, and HNTB will be required to participate in that. So staff has reviewed the contractor's list of remaining submissions and the contractor's current schedule for delivering these submissions and determined that a second addendum to the 12th Amendment to the PSA with HNTB is necessary for HNTB to continue providing engineering design support for Project 1526. Engineering staff requested an HNTB provided a cost estimate in the amount of $1,400,000 for the requested additional scope of services related to the review of the outstanding submittals. Staff will be monitoring the work and will inform the committee if conditions change and if additional services are required. Engineering staff has reviewed the cost proposal and found it to be reasonable in terms of HNTB's budgeted labor hours to perform the additional scope of services and is consistent with HNTB's audited labor and overhead billing rates. HNTB will be compensated for time expended and actual expenses incurred, plus a fixed fee for the not-to-exceed amount. The district's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program Administrator determined that there will be no DBE participation associated with work under the second addendum. HNTB will self-perform all of this work. As was previously also reported to the committee in November, by November 2024, the additional time of construction was estimated to increase the cost of contract administration and construction engineering efforts of engineering staff and consultants, as well as additional highway patrol support and National Park Service permit fees by $25,488,717. So if the action recommended in this report is approved by the board of directors, the total cost of the increase to some of these contracts will be $14,570,000 at this time. So with that, staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the execution of the second addendum, 12th Amendment to PSA number 2011B2 in a not-to-exceed amount of $1,400,000 to perform these services. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John, for that comprehensive report. Are there any questions or comments from directors at this time? Oh, yes, sorry, Dick.
It anticipates if the contractor submits his schedules on time, it will cover all of the work that will be performed through 2025. contractor continues with multiple submissions and resubmissions, there may be the need to come back for additional funds. 6 years. So some of the issues that have come up. So the contractor will design an access system which needs to be placed on the bridge. We will review it. HNTB will review that, and then the contractor will decide they are not going to use that system and they're going to use a different system. So they'll submit that work plan and those technical submissions. They'll continue to do that not just for access plans, but for installing the new travelers or installing the net at different locations. That has been a continuing theme on this project with the contractor. And so we think we have anticipated the remaining submittals, but time will tell. Understood. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you. I don't know, because I ask this because of the history, and I know that sometimes submittals are not all of the same quality. Do we feel confident that this is strictly a contract for a review, and not supplanting design services that need to be done on the contractor's side?
Sorry, I missed the question.
I probably didn't ask it as clearly as I should have, but I want to make sure that it's the contract that we have with HNTB, or that HNTB is not necessarily doing the design work for the contractor, but really doing the review work.
That's correct. The
what's
contractor
submitted.
submits designs. They may be of lesser quality than most folks submit, but that's correct. HNTB is not doing the work for the contractor.
Thank you, David. Any other questions? Okay. That concludes discussion on item number 3. But before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no speakers in the room for this item, and we have no speakers online for this item.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion on agenda item number 3 to approve actions relative to professional services agreement number 2011B2 with HNTB Corporation?
So moved.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jerry. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. We are committee of whole still with a first and a second. So we're going to start with Director Conroy is absent, Dorsey is absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino,
Aye.
Giudice,
Yes.
Grosboll, Hernandez, Maston, Moulton Peters is absent, Parr is absent, Rabbit,
Aye.
Redoni,
Aye.
Sefai is absent, Snyder is absent, Stephanie is absent. There is a recusal. Second Vice President Hill, First Vice President Cochran, and President Terrio. Thank you. You have 10 ayes.
Great. Thank you again. That motion passes. We will continue on to item number 4, which is to approve actions relative to professional services agreement number 2010B1, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge Seismic Retrofit Design Services with HDR Engineering Incorporated. The staff report begins on page 15, and John will also present the following report. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the item before you here requests your recommendation to authorize execution of the 13th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement number 2010B1 with HDR Engineering Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $351,150 for additional engineering design services associated with the Golden Gate Bridge seismic retrofit project for 1923, and to establish a 10% contingency for the amendment in the amount of $35,100. So by resolution 2009-70, the board authorized execution of PSA number 2010B1 with HDR Engineering to reevaluate and update the suspension bridge seismic retrofit strategy and to prepare the final design plans and specifications for the Golden Gate Bridge seismic and wind retrofit project. So HDR has completed approximately 85% of the design for seismic portion. The wind retrofit has been completed and the construction was performed as a part of the physical suicide deterrent project. Recently, by Resolution 2018-49, the Board of Directors approved the use of the Construction Manager General Contractor CMGC construction project delivery method for the construction of the Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit project. The district has advertised a request for qualifications for number 2023 B15, which is Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit CMGC pre-construction services. We've recently received proposals for that, have interviewed, and are working with the highest ranked proposer on those CMGC pre-construction scope of services. Work includes, among other tasks, reviewing and commenting on the design plans performed by HDR and specifications and other relevant project documents. The CMGC project delivery method allows the district to engage a construction contractor during the final project design stage to provide consulting services related to various aspects of the project construction. These include developing construction means and methods, construction work plans, construction schedules, establishing a construction contract price. So after the design plans and specifications for the project are finalized, the district plans to request that the CMGC prepare and submit a price for the project construction. And if it is found to be acceptable, we'll enter into a construction contract with that entity. So upon award of the CMGC pre-construction services, the district will provide to the entity the 85% completed design plans, specifications, and other relevant documents for their review and use during the pre-construction services. So the district has reviewed the current status of the design plans and specifications with HDR and determined that the plans and specifications must be updated, as I'll list here, before we provide those to the CMGC. So the scope of services that we're looking to have performed by January of 2024 include converting the specifications to conform to the 2023 Caltrans standard specifications, updating the design plans and specifications to include the suicide deterrent system details. Those were not originally included in the design scope. Updating the design plans and specifications to include modifications to the energy dissipation device details. Those are based on the recent results of the EDD stainless steel test. Updating the design plans and specifications to remove the Lincoln Boulevard and Toll Plaza undercrossing upgrades from the construction documents because this work will not be included in the project. Updating technical specs for the Fort Arch energy dissipation device modifications. Updating the energy dissipation device calculation to account for duplex stainless steel components used for the various EDD types, and updating the EDD enclosure details. Engineering staff and asked HDR to provide scope of work and cost proposal, which they did in the amount of $351,150 for performing the engineering design and services noted. Staff has reviewed the cost proposal, found it to be reasonable in terms of HDR's budgeted labor hours to perform the additional scope requested by the district, and is consistent with HDR's audited rates. HDR will be compensated for actual time and expenses incurred, plus a fixed fee. So staff recommends, the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the execution of the 13th Amendment to PSA number 2010-B1, HDR Engineering, in the not to exceed amount of $351,150 to perform the additional design services, and also recommends a contingency for this 13th Amendment in the amount of $35,100 should any additional scope develop. The DBE Program Administrator has determined that there will be no DBE participation associated with the work amendment, and with that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you again, John, for that thorough and comprehensive report. Are there any questions or comments from Directors David and then Jim?
I'm just curious, two things. Where exactly is the Lincoln Boulevard undercrossing? Which one is that?
It's right to the south of us here. Lincoln, our right of way goes to the south of Toll Plaza, and so Lincoln Boulevard is the roadway underneath the highway.
So it's not the one immediately under the building, But if you leave the director's lot and you go up the hill and turn left on Lincoln, you'll go under the
Okay,
highway.
yes.
So it's that one.
And just so I know, why did we remove those? Is that a budget consideration or is it a actual structural consideration?
We took them out of this for a couple reasons. One of them is when we went to receive our grant application with FHWA for the larger construction project, we decided to leave that. It was a small scope of work, and just determined at that time to better get that grant to leave that out and focus on the suspension bridge. We've also determined through our design that there's no retrofit necessary on Lincoln.
That's a good reason to leave it out.
Oh, that too.
Great. Okay, David. On to Jim.
Thank you. On page 15, under the recommendation, it looks as though the 10% contingency is in addition to the 351,000, not to exceed amount, but in the history spreadsheet, it looks like it's included. So, which is it?
It is in addition to the 351,000 amount.
Because it's not included on the spreadsheet at the
Well, we have not yet. It's an authorization by the board, but it will not be in the PSA until we do another amendment. So this amendment is going to be for 351,150. But if the board authorizes 35,000 and we need additional funds, we would do an addendum to that amendment for the 35,000 if necessary. So it's not in the PSA yet.
Okay.
It's in the budget, but it's not in the PSA.
They couldn't be done at the same time.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? That concludes discussion on item number 4. Before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
We have no speakers for this item online or in the building.
Thank you again, Amaret. Now I have a motion on agenda item number 4 to approve actions relative to professional services agreement number 2010B1 with HDR Engineering Incorporated.
So moved.
Thank you, David. That's a lot. Thank you again, Jerry. A lot of shyness here. Madam Secretary, a roll call vote again, please.
Thank you. We're voting on item number 4 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy, who's absent, Dorsey is absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Grosbo. Hernandez. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Parr is absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Sefai is absent. Snyder is absent. Stephanie is absent. There is a recusal. Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 10 ayes.
Thank you very much. That motion passes. And may we please have someone invite Holly back into the room? Thank you, Thomas. She's probably using the new elevator. Enjoying that. Yeah. Running down like you did as a kid at the Emporium, Market Street. Yeah. I know, especially at Christmas. Okay, welcome back, Holly. We will continue now on to item number 5, which is to authorize payment relative to terminating contract number 2022 F084 CARB compliant Tier 4 diesel engines. The staff report begins on page 23, and Mike Hoffman is here to present the report. Mike, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. In March of 2022, the California Air Resource Board passed amendments to the regulation that governs tailpipe emissions from commercial vessels operating in California waters. The regulation requires vessels to install an EPA-rated Tier 4 engine in a CARB-verified diesel particulate filter, or DPF. Based on available information and after performing feasibility studies, staff determined it would be feasible to repower the Spalding vessels with Tier 4 rated engines that included a diesel particulate filter. Due to long lead times, and the deadlines for CARB compliance, staff recommended and received board authorization to purchase 4 EPA-rated Tier 4 engines from Pacific Power Group in advance of performing engineering work for repower. These engines were purchased for the repower of the MS Marin and the MS San Francisco and had lead times of 12 to 18 months. At the time, we had minimal knowledge of the space and weight penalty for the diesel particulate filter, but we understood that the significant modifications would need to be made to the Spalding vessels to accommodate for the additional exhaust after-treatment devices. Earlier this year, Ferry Division staff began working with a naval architect firm to develop the specifications and plans for the installation of the CARB-required engines and exhaust after-treatment devices. By the time we kick off the engineering project, more information had become available regarding the size and weight of the DPF. The overall size of the 2 DPFs would have more impact than originally estimated and also carried a significant weight penalty. Staff explored various options for fitment of the CARB-compliant package and landed on an arrangement that would have the least amount of impact to vessel performance and passenger capacity. Before we committed to drafting plans and a full design specification for the vessel modifications, we requested the naval architect perform an impact report to better understand the performance of the Spalding vessels after being repowered for CARB compliance. As outlined on page 2 of the staff report, the repower has significant negative impacts to the vessel's performance. The vessel's top speed will be reduced by 2 knots. The reduction in service speed will require changes to our schedule to accommodate for longer crossing times and to connect with our regional transit partners. Increasing the vessel's length will make it more challenging for the boat to fit alongside the piers at the locations we serve. The Spaldings are not highly maneuverable. They're not like our catamaran vessels, and the vast majority of the wear and tear in our gangways and piers is the result of Spalding contact. The weight addition of the repower requires us to file for a new stability letter with the United States Coast Guard. The stability letter determines the maximum passenger capacity of the vessel. It is expected that Spaldings will lose at least 150 passengers from their maximum capacity. The biggest benefit today of the Spaldings to the district is their ability to carry a large amount of passengers. Reduction in passenger capacity for the Spaldings means it will carry a maximum of between 550 and 600 passengers. Lowering the maximum passenger capacity really shrinks, the value margin of the Spaldings when compared to the high-speed catamarans. Vessels also lose valuable bike storage space vital to our Sausalito and Angel Island services. Along with the negative impacts of repower, it became clear that the cost of repower, originally estimated at $5 million per vessel, would be more than $10 million per vessel. The capital project for Spalding repower is funded by 100% district funds. Staff engaged in multiple meetings to determine the best course of action for Golden Gate Ferry. We met with the Metropolitan Transit Commission, whom confirmed that the San Francisco and Marin are eligible for MTA replacement funding at a maximum level of 80%. Given all the information available, staff determined the best course of action for the district is to replace the Spaldings with a high-speed vessel that can be used interchangeably in any of the district route profiles. Pacific Power Group, our regional service provider and vendor for MTU engines and all of our fleet, was instructed by staff to stop all work on the Tier 4 engines on July 14th of 2023. Under terms of the contract, the district must pay for all work performed through that date. Pacific Power Group submitted an invoice to the district in the amount of $299,576, less than 10% of the contract value, which includes engineering, order execution, project planning, and ancillary engine components purchased to fulfill the contract through the July 14th date of termination. Staff recommends the board authorize a payment of $299,576 to Pacific Power Group for termination of contract 2022 F84. Agenda item 6 in the Finance Auditing Committee includes an establishment of a capital budget in the amount of $63 million for the design and build of 3 new vessels replacing the Spaldings. The Spaldings were built in the mid-70s and are approximately 50 years old. They have been through multiple repowers, having originally been powered by gas turbine engines. It makes sense at this juncture to design a new vessel around the CARB requirements that will utilize cleaner burning engines, have a whole design that maximizes vessel efficiency, because it was designed around a specific CARB compliant power plant. This concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. Dennis, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. In my GM report, whenever I have to take an emergency contract action, I report it out. And I've been general manager for 13 years, and I've reported out many times where ferries have hit various facilities and caused damage, and all of those have been Spalding vessels. So in addition to, Mike presented a very detailed presentation, but these hulls are over 50 years old, but they're not very maneuverable. And if we were to continue with these, they would become even less maneuverable. And if our landlord in San Francisco at the port, their druthers, they would ban our Spaldings from ever coming into the docks. I got to say that. And so staff strongly supports the item before you.
Wonderful. All good. Yes, Jim, go ahead.
I would expect that tomorrow Dave Rohde in the board meeting is probably going to bring up, this is a perfect time to investigate or look at electric ferries, and what is our response at this time?
Yep. So in the approved FY 23-24 budget, there is an item for fleet electrification concept. It's a $375,000 capital budget, and we are developing the scope for that to dive into what an electric fleet could look like.
I'll expand upon that also. You may recall earlier this year, the board authorized a $300,000 contribution to participate in the first hydrogen fuel cell ferry constructed in the United States. And I shared with President Theriault that I'd be inviting him to a ceremony to celebrate the vessel starting service last spring. As we sit here today, it does not have a certificate of inspection. So we're excited about technology. We're exploring it, and we will roll it out. Mike went to Europe as part of a contingent from the States, from Washington State Ferries and WIDA, that reviewed the available technology. It is getting better quickly, but our speed profiles and the distance we cover right now are not met with the available technology. That is changing, and we look forward to the sea change starting service in the coming months to do a 6-month trial in Francisco Bay. And a hydrogen fuel cell boat is an electric boat that operates with hydrogen fuel cells in lieu of a battery. It does have a battery also, but we look forward to that starting service someday.
Okay,
Wonderful. And I will call on, it was David first. Okay. I just want to make mention of the presentation that Mike gave on that European trip, especially those ferries that are utilized in Norway, was phenomenal. And those of you that weren't lucky to see it, I know I've mentioned this before, but I know Moret has a copy. It was really great. So first David, then Dick, and then Bert and Holly. Sorry.
So two questions really. The timing and consequences of the CARB requirement. I take it in the interim we're going to continue on the Spaldings. Will we have the consequences of that with the CARB?
So we have a hard date that at some point we will not be able to upgrade our current fleet of ferries without replacing them or doing the modifications that Mike presented to you. So time is important because when that date comes and goes, if we do not have CARB compliant ferry boats, they will not be allowed to fire up the engines and take people across San Francisco Bay.
But as we sit here today, we think that we can replace in time to not suffer any consequences.
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that. And then you mentioned too, and thanks for the presentation, Mike. You mentioned the capacity of the Spaldings. When we go forward, are we going to be looking at a larger capacity for the more high-speed boats to kind of keep that in the fleet?
Yeah, so high-speed boat is much more weight sensitive. We're developing one right now that is a 500-passenger boat. That's pretty much the maximum that we can for passengers high-speed vessel. So we are working with planning right now to determine what a count should look like on a potential Spalding replacement.
I might add, the designer that Mike is working with his team is the same one that designed the most recent WIDA boats, and just changing the hull design and matching it to your propulsion systems resulted in a 40% reduction in fuel use. So having modern hulls cannot be cannot be overstated with respect to the impact it'll have on our operations in terms of costs as well as emissions.
Thank you, David. Dick? Okay, thank you. And then I think it was Bert and Holly.
Yeah, Mr. Rohde is probably going to ask what the source of the hydrogen will be for the vessels or the plan for them so that they are truly zero emissions.
So the 6-month pilot will not be clean, green, blue hydrogen. It will be a proof concept with whatever's available, to be candid. But if it proves that, this is for the sea change, not these vessels, but if it proves effective and the technology works, there are efforts underway in the United States and in California to produce, hydrogen that does not create emissions. But are using lots of electricity that's produced in a green fashion. But that's for another day and for another topic. But the 6-month pilot will be using whatever hydrogen's available, and we just need to be honest with ourselves that it's not what people would prefer. But like I said, it's important to do a proof of concept to see if it's worth pursuing that path and to scale up to that path.
Thank you for an answer to that question. Yes.
Thank you, Bert. Holly. Yes, I'm not sure if you will have an answer to this question, but what I'm thinking about is if we're looking at acquiring 3 new vessels now, what is the projection of when the technology will be available for electrification? Because generally we keep these ferries for a very long time. And I guess in my mind, I'm trying to think about how long do we think before we would have that technology? Because if we get a boat, get 3 boats today, and in 5 years the technology's there, I'm trying to weigh that in my mind. Because if we keep the boats for,
It's an excellent question, and there's a couple components to the answer. We've kept our hulls for a long time. Arguably, maybe we shouldn't have kept the Spalding hulls as long as we did, even though the hulls were in great shape, because it's not a particularly efficient form. It creates one of the largest wakes on San Francisco Bay. So having hull forms that are much more modern provides us lots of opportunities. What we did in the past was we repowered the Spaldings numerous times to keep those hulls in use. So theoretically, depending on the technology, there may be opportunities to repower these vessels, or we may have to replace them like we're contemplating replacing the Spaldings today. The issue is if we do nothing, we won't be running ferry service to Tiburon, Larkspur, or Sauce, or Angel Island at some date in a couple of years because we won't have boats that meet the requirements. So kind of in a difficult place where we need to make decisions. And the decision before you is to provide fast before our customers their expectations that will allow us to continue to operate in this business with the understanding that we're going to spend this money, and at a future date we may not be able to use these boats similar to the Spaldings, and we don't control those things, the timing of those things. The question is, are we going to invest to stay in the ferry business? That's really the fundamental question before you. Staff feels it's important. It's a very robust service. It's a growing service, and we think it's good for the environment to get people off of Highway 101.
okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out if there's any idea. I mean, it may be like playing God to know when the technology will be where we could actually purchase electric ferries, but I was trying to get an idea of
No one knows, and the electric may not be battery, it may be hydrogen fuel, because batteries are not very energy density weight. The energy density to weight ratio is not very good for batteries compared to some other options. And so there's, I think, a lot that's being learned right now in Europe. Short ferry trips have to go pretty quickly to electric. So the Tiburon ferry that goes to Angel Island, which is a less than 3-mile trip, will have to convert pretty quickly. We'll learn from that, like we're learning from the sea change. One of the biggest challenges going electric, if that's the option chosen, is how do you charge the vessels? How they do it in Europe is they have massive battery banks or microgrids or whatever you want to call them. But they have 2-story tall docks that are giant floating batteries that they trickle charge. The boat comes in and they zap charge it. And I hope the communities that we serve and their interest in going green are starting to get their heads around the fact that there's going to be a big something someplace to store energy so we can zap these boats if that's a path we go down. Because there is these 2 choices between hydrogen and batteries. And so the land side will be more problematic than the vessel itself side if the battery is a choice instead of hydrogen fuel cells. And it's important that people start thinking about that. Because if you remember the great presentation Mike did, there were photos of some of the docks where they tied up to, and they were not minimalist in scale. And, I know people in the Bay Area are very fond of views and view sheds, and so we need to start wrapping our heads around that. Everything in life is a trade-off, and we will have trade-offs as we move forward down this path.
Especially in Sausalito.
I might add, I know you will find this beyond incredibly fascinating. But I get to go with a group of other waste haulers to Germany to a phenomenal conference called IFOT. Its twin is Waste Expo. But I've just learned that there will be a presentation of actually in Germany of functioning garbage trucks that actually have a fuel cell of hydrogen that's independent, that doesn't depend on external sources. And there's a similarity there because of the weight load that buses, in our case, ferries, and garbage trucks have, especially when they're full. So thank you. I could answer other questions or invite you to IFOT if you want to learn more. Did you have another question, David?
Only a comment, and I think just to Dennis' point regarding technology. I mean, Sonoma County prides itself on being very climate conscious. Our county camp center is fueled by a hydrogen fuel cell, which we had to replace within about a year's time, and it cost us millions and millions of dollars. We had received some grants, not all of it, but just putting it out there that always have to be cautious and maybe not be on the spear or the sword, because it does get a little bloody. We experienced that.
Yeah.
Santa Rosa City Bus recently reached out to us asking if they lease some of our buses. We're not fully utilizing our buses because of their electric buses. And so yes, we would gladly help out. We have to navigate the Federal Transit Administration process. But some of our some of our hybrid electric buses, diesel hybrid electrics, we will probably be leasing to Santa Rosa City Bus to help them through a transition that's not going quite as planned.
A lot of bleeding on the cutting edge. Yeah, you're right. This is a very dynamic and exciting time. So that, I think, concludes. Oh, did you have something, Holly? Yeah.
I just was very interesting to hear you talk about the storage of the electricity, and I wanted to mention that when I was saying I was including hydrogen. Just whatever the best, most environmentally friendly we can do, and it's. I know that a lot of times we have to wait for the technology to catch up with the desire, and I think that is the position that we're in right now with the vessels, the new ferry vessels. But I did also want to mention that I'm on the Marin Clean Energy Board, and one of the things that we've been looking at is battery storage. So once the district gets to the point of, it's a different type of battery storage, but I think the companies are going to end up being the same companies that would do it for the district versus for Marin Clean Energy. So I wanted to throw that out there for the future.
Great. I know there's a lot more to come, but I think this might conclude our discussion on item number 5. Thank you. Think about business on it. Before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no speakers in the room, and we have no speakers online for this item.
Great. May I have a motion then on item number 5 to authorize payment relative to terminating contract number 2022F084? Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, David. Madam Secretary, a roll call vote.
Thank you. This is item number 5 with first and second, starting with Director Conroy, who's absent, Dorsey is absent, and Garza is absent. Garber, no.
Aye.
Giudice,
Yes.
Grosbull, Hernandez, Maston, Bolton Peters is absent, Parr is absent, Rapid, Verdoni,
Aye.
Safai is absent, Snyder is absent, Stephanie is absent, Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill, First Vice President Cochran, and President Terrio. Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Great. That item passes. We will continue on now to item number 6, which is to approve actions relative to the naming of a new ferry vessel. The staff report begins on page 27, and Mike will also be presenting this report. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning again. And this item is in reference to the 500 passenger vessel I mentioned previously in the last report. The agenda item relates to the naming of a new ferry vessel, which is currently in the design phase of the project. At the April board meeting, staff recommended 3 names based on a rate choice survey of ferry division staff and internal stakeholders. The 3 names were the MV Point Reyes, the MV Olompali, and the MV Salt Point. After some brief discussion, the Building and Operating Committee selected the MV Olompali as the new ferry name, which received board approved contingency that staff reached out to the representatives of the Coast Miwok for their approval. Staff did perform outreach in May of this year to the Federated Tribes of the Great Rancheria to obtain approval to name the new ferry vessel the MV Olompali. Great Rancheria staff informed the district that, after review, the Tribal Council did not approve the name MV Olompali for use on the district's new ferry vessel, and that they have an internal research and development process for recommending names to outside organizations. District staff, understanding that the board chose MV Olompali as a way to honor people indigenous to the area, engaged with the Tribal Heritage and Preservation team to develop a new naming recommendation. On September 27th of this year, staff was informed that the Tribal Heritage and Preservation team had selected a name that received Tribal Council approval for use on the new district ferry vessel. The approved name, MV Liwa, that's L-I-W-A, means simply water in the Coast Miwok language and is used to name bodies of water or place names that are near bodies of water. Staff recommends that the board approve the MV Liwa for official filing with the United States Coast Guard for the new district ferry vessel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. I remember that dialogue very well and your recommendation. Are there any questions or comments from directors at this time?
Just thanking the staff for their due diligence and reaching out and respecting the wishes of the Great Federated Indians Great Rancheria.
Yes, you led that charge. All good, Mike.
Excuse me, I want to second Director Giudice's comments and also say Liwa is a lovely name. What I would also ask is that there is the possibility in the future of expanding our fleet. That this suggests a pattern for naming vessels in the expansion of our fleet, but that the issue of obtaining and confirming names with indigenous peoples is complicated for a variety of reasons, some of which are doing. So I would ask, given the time that we have for this, that staff look into this and propose a process to us and a policy that we might follow at some point in the future.
If I may, in response to that, we concur wholeheartedly, but as we replace some of our older fleet, not new boats, we would use the same county names because we think it's important to have the 6 counties that represent the district to be included in the names. But then any vessels beyond that, as we expand the fleet, we will develop a policy consistent with what's recommended.
Great. Any other discussion or questions? Yes, Holly, go ahead.
I just wanted to commend staff in working with the Groton Rancheria and the naming council and getting to the point where we do have an approved name. I also believe that that is a very nice name and honors the tribe. I also like the suggestion from our president, Terry. I think that's a great one to have some rules and protocols for when we do get a new vessel. Great, Dick.
No, it's strictly an internal process initially, so there's a lesson there also.
Anyone else? No, see no one. That concludes. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's true. Went that way. The tribes finding out what they wanted in that process.
Very commendable. Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes,
Not
David.
not to beat it up any further.
No, this is good.
Because I was first elected when Grayton was coming into my county and my district, I've been intimately involved in a lot of tribal issues, both statewide and nationwide. I would just, and I'm not sure how we focus just solely on Grayton, but whatever we do in the future, we should make sure that it's inclusive of all tribes. We have 5 in the county, and I know that this particular day may not be the consensus. Just putting it out there because of the linguistics and everything else that have occurred over the years.
So, under state and federal laws dealing with archaeology and tribal protections, our Larkspur Ferry Terminal as well as our San Rafael Transit Center are located within the, I don't think jurisdiction is the right word, but of the Great Rancheria, which includes the coastal Miwok. So they are the appropriate agency. So that's who we're consulting with any project at Larkspur or the San Rafael Transit Center.
Great. Would anyone else like to continue this discussion? I think it had a very good outcome. Yes, Jerry.
Yes, I'm on. Yes, because Delaware County has one of the largest tribes in California, the Hurons, and I've dealt with them naming things, and they are difficult to work with on occasion, but you get the job done. But I would hate to have those people left out of any naming in the future of vessels. So, yeah, okay. But with that, I'll make the motion to approve the item number 7
Second.
or 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Holly. Is there anyone?
We have no speakers on the public line. We have no speakers in the room.
Great. This was a very healthy discussion. I want to just add that. Great. A roll call vote then, please.
Thank you. You have a first and a second. First from Director Cochran, if you didn't hear it, and the second from Director Thayer. So we're going to do a roll call vote again, starting with Director Conroy, who's absent, Dorsey is absent, and Guardia is absent. Garbarino?
Aye.
Giudice?
Yes.
Grosbo? Hernandez? Maston? Holton Peters is absent. Parr is absent. Rabbit? Verdoni?
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder is absent. Stephanie is absent. Thayer?
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill?
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
And President Terry?
Yes.
Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Wonderful. That item passes. So we continue on to item number 7, which is to authorize award of contracts relative to request for proposals number 2023D 006, Microsoft and BMW are professional services. VMware professional services. The staff report begins on page 29, and Fong Liu is here to present the report.
Yeah.
Please begin.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today before you is an item for approval for an on-call professional services bench for Microsoft and VMware services. Staff recommends the the execution of 5 contracts pursuant to RFP number 2023-D-006, and this is going to be for a 3-year term with 2 one-year option terms exercisable at the district's sole discretion, with the not to exceed amount of $750,000 at any given year, for a total aggregate amount of $3,750,000. So the staff recommended 5 firms for these contracts. They are ePlus Technology, iShift LLC, Zones LLC, Soft Choice Corporation, and Worldwide Technology. So in 2017, the district established a bench which really helped to increase the efficiency and providing more flexibility to our technology procurement process. Since then, we have seen a great improvement in those areas and enabled the delivery of technologies throughout the district at a timely manner. And in April 2023, this year, the district issued an RFP for Microsoft and VMware professional services. We had a potentially very large pool. We were able to potentially reach out to over 4,000 proposers, which including 330 DPEs. And it was a difficult RFP to bid on. 7 proposers submitted their proposals. 1 withdrew during the process, so that left us 6. The RFP selection committee identified 5 firms that best qualified our criteria. Criteria that we formed in the RFP were the proposal understanding and approach, proposers' qualifications and experience, cost, and social equity. Out of the number of firms, these 5 these five demonstrated their strong understanding of our RFP and their experiences and qualifications. In addition, they have also worked for other government agencies and transport agencies like Golden Gate Bridge. So for the financial impact, again, we are asking for a fixed number of $750,000 at any given year of the 3-year term, and aggregate total of $3,750,000. It was made clear to all firms that there was no guarantee on level of effort and the work allocation unless the work and the budget are approved by the district. So for fiscal year 23 to 24, the district's operating work capital will absorb the funding and services needed. For future years, it will go through our normal annual fiscal budget proposal process. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you, Fong, for that presentation. It was great. Are there any questions or comments from directors at this time? Oh, yes, Dennis.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. Thank you for the report. I noticed that all the firms are from out of state. We had a couple that were local and or in-state. One withdrew. Do we give any weight to local work?
We do not. We do not.
Yeah, based on their qualifications and background expertise.
Yes, Dick. Oh, sorry. Dennis, you were done?
Business enterprises and got none back. So I don't know if it was too complex or what, but it's just a little striking, those numbers. So
Agreed.
So, to answer your question, we did have even a solicitation of direct phone call process to reach out those DBEs. In general, this was a very difficult RFP because it requires certain partnership with Microsoft and VMware services. In addition, also certification in this area. It's more attainable to larger firms. And also, these kind of RFPs compared to other ones on the market, normally those work for private sectors are more attractive to certain firms than public. So based on the situation we are dealing with, we only received 7 and 1 withdrawal.
it's just a comment.
Thank you, Dick, for that comment. Holly?
Yes, I had a question as to whether there was a DBE or an LBE percentage. It would have been DBE, I believe. DBE in the prime contracts?
They're not federally funded, so we, under state law, are prohibited from having a DBE percentage.
Okay, or LBE?
We encourage participation, but we did not have a goal.
Okay, so I would just recommend in the future, I know when it's a really highly complex RFP, especially with technology, where a lot of firms, smaller firms cannot get those certifications, sometimes a way, to help the smaller firms and to provide involvement, even if you can't do it as a DBE, there's also the state certification, the small business, which isn't that small, but there is also a local business certification that's done, through the CUCP. And I know that the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission just went out on a technology bid. And what they did is they did provide some preferences for firms that were smaller. They also provided goals within the actual RFP so that a larger firm could partner with a smaller firm that could not qualify to prime. And they did that through their technology marketplace. And they do different tiers. Also, used to be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 3 was for the micro businesses that were very small. And and then it created a marketplace of contracts that these firms could bid on. So the top tier companies that are really, really big, have all the certifications, their bidding marketplace would be maybe contracts. They could compete for contracts up to 20 million. And then I can't remember, the second tier might have been 10 million. The smaller tier was, you know, in like 3 years or something, you could get $200,000 worth of contracts. But it gave a way for the smaller companies to get in, compete, and work their way up, and also make partnerships with larger companies and also have a role in the larger contracts. So it's kind of an interesting marketplace to look at for the future.
Yeah, I'm
But
definitely happy to look into that and work with our DPE manager in the district to find opportunities to give, you know, the smaller firms work at the district for that.
yeah, just an idea.
Great idea. Okay, is there anyone else that has anything to add to this discussion? No? Okay. That concludes our discussion on this item, but before we continue on with our vote, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item?
We have no speakers on this item or in the room.
Okay. May I have a motion on agenda item number 7 to authorize award of contracts relative to request for proposals number 2023D006?
So moved.
Thank you. Okay, may we have a roll call vote? Thank you.
We have a first and second on item number 7, starting with Director Conroy is absent, Dorsey is absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Grosbo. Hernandez. Maston. Moulton Peters is absent. Parr is absent. Rapid. Verdoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder is absent. Stephanie is absent. Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran. And President Terrio. Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Thank you. That item passes. We will now continue on to item number 8, which is an informational monthly report from the board appointees on the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Board. And I'll start off with the report by being quite upfront and honest and telling you that I pinched it all from our general manager's report from last week, which was wonderful. That pinched is a professional term. And the general manager's report specifically consisted of an update on contracts and procurements over $100,000, ridership update, average boardings per trip, pathway counts. And I'm going to rely on my colleague David to also update you and give a far better report. The recovery, however, before I get there, and the other 47 pages are over here, I'll go over those later. But the recovery, if you compare August 2019 to August 2023, which you cannot see, but all the way over to your left is 110%. So SMART is really growing, which is wonderful. Sorry, Dennis. And it's all good. It's all good, right? It's totally all good. Another wonderful rubric that you can't see, but it's very colorful about ridership improvement. Average weekday ridership as well is growing. For instance, September is 7% higher than September 2019. September's ridership was 68,506, and they've even done an analysis of boardings by trip, which will take a long time to explain, and I'd love to tell you about it later. It's a fascinating analysis of how far do people go on the train. And then pathway counts in September hit 67,600. And David, do you want to help save me from anything else?
Yeah, no, I think actually since we last spoke, there's been some great news regarding a lot of dollars coming into SMART from different sources, including a consolidated rail infrastructure and safety improvement program from the FRA. They got almost $32 million there, replacing 3 freight locomotives with Tier 4 engines, obviously, and then also doing the positive train control, which is that system that protects pretty much everyone on the tracks from Windsor to Healdsburg, and it moves that project further along. Positive, I think SMART was the first in the nation to install the positive train control, which came out of that accident, I think, back east where the train was going too fast around the corner. So this is the system that retards the engines, even if the engineer is not doing the right thing, where they track and to make sure that those accidents do not happen. And the 50% non-federal match on those dollars are going to come from BACMed and Bay Area Air Quality Management, and then state of California. Also, I think we had another grant. I was trying to find the specific breakdown, but it was another sizable grant that came through on I think it's the Sustainable Communities piece for about 30 something million. No, closer to 40 really, because I know the developer of a project on Petaluma North station site will get 30 million for 100% affordable housing project. And then the other good news in the last meeting was really the finally signing the contracts to break ground on Petaluma North, which is I always refer to as the East Side Station, but it's really called Petaluma North in the train world. And I will tell you that the costs of that, they were coupled with two other projects, a path project and some other paving work in order to try to get a better overall price. But the price was about $7.5 million more than the original engineer's estimate, which goes to what we probably all realize in the other aspects, that price of oil, inflation, and everything else is just pushing construction costs that much higher. But we did transfer some money to make that happen, and that's moving forward. So it was actually a good celebratory time at SMART these days.
Very good report. Thank you for that, David. Any discussion or questions on that report? Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to us on that?
We have no speakers on this item.
Okay. As you know, no action is required for item number 8, so we will continue on to item number 9, the status report on engineering projects, which begins on page 35. And John will present again this report. Go right ahead.
Good morning. Our written report is before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Wonderful. Wonderful report. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, we have a question. I'm sorry. I was getting a tutorial on the pushing of the button. Great. Mike and then Jim.
We have a leader now in the CMGC process. Halmar, I think was the name of the company. I did a little looking up, and they're apparently from the northeast, work mostly up there. A lot of bridge work. Are we going to hear about them at length at a future meeting? Do you want to say something about it now?
So currently we're in the negotiating phase. So it's an RFQ process. So they were the highest ranked firm. So we're in negotiations with them now on scope and pricing. And once we finish that negotiation, yes, we'll have a more in-depth discussion.
Thank you.
Great. Jim.
On page 75, relative to fluazepam, University of California Integrated Pest Management considers it as having a high potential hazard to water quality and aquatic wildlife, while other sources stated, quote, is of relatively low toxicity to birds and mammals, but can be highly toxic to fish and aquatic invertebrates. So considering all of this, and where it would be applied, I would oppose our use of this.
Understood. You have lots of colleagues that feel the same way, even more strongly. And so staff has committed that we will report back to you before we ever contemplate it. And if the decision is not to do it, we'll get pricing to use other means and methods. But such a decision is a couple years off for this board. But your colleagues have weighed in, and we heard them loud and clear.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Holly, did you want to say something? No.
Just that we did have a long discussion about this, but there was one thing that I had asked for, and I would like to renew my request. My understanding was that there was going to be conversations with sorry, there's a bug. There's a bug in front of me. Sorry, I was trying to get the bug. Anyway, yeah, and I just want to also renew. I had asked that this be reported back to us monthly, because the issue with waiting for 2 years is that some of us may not be on the board anymore, and these projects kind of have a life of their own. So then, it may be 18 months from now, and then there's no time to look into the alternatives, or there's no time to come up with that backup plan. So I would really appreciate it if staff could help us by looking into those backup plans now. And, my original request, I think 2 meetings ago, was that there was a report back that took out the use of the herbicide and that we were presented with some alternatives. So I would just love to see that happen and us be able to, feel confident that we're not going to be spraying herbicide in a marshland in a wetlands protection project or wetland rehabilitation project.
And the engineer's report is containing an update every month of this, so it is in the report. The changes from the prior month are highlighted. I believe that's where the Director Mastin's question came from, and so they will continue to report the status of it. The contractor has been out there the last couple of weeks after the bird season to mechanically remove materials and stuff, and we'll continue to report the status of it. But we understand clearly that the board is strongly interested in not seeing any herbicides ever applied at this site. And we'll continue to report monthly what we're doing and where we're at. And like I said, we understand that if there's a decision made to go one way or the other, we would come back to the board with a change order for the additional cost to mechanically remove stuff.
Great. There's no action associated with this item. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item or address this committee under item number 10?
We have no speakers since the beginning of the meeting. However, if it's okay with you in the committee, we'd like to pull the public one last time. I've seen a number of people that jumped on, so we would like to at least opportunity to see if anybody wanted to speak on any items. Justine, would you like to poll the public?
Certainly, thank you. If there's anybody that would like to speak this morning under public comment, please use ** to unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody. Thank you.
Right. Sounds like we do not have any speakers for public comment for this committee.
Righty. We've reached the end of the agenda, and I want to thank Bert for the shortness of his first meeting. That was gracious of you so that we could have a good, healthy discussion. So may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting in a second? Thank you both. Hearing no objections, this concludes the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee. Thank you, colleagues. The time is 10:30. Thank you.
10:38.